People like to believe land is just land, something you own, something you measure, something you control. But some places were never meant to be crossed, never meant to be opened, never meant to be questioned. They work as long as you respect the boundary. And the moment you don't, the land remembers. I need to say this out loud before I talk myself into forgetting it. My name is Evan Carter. I am 33 years old, and I recently inherited a large piece of farmland in the Midwest that I will never step on again. Let me explain why. My grandfather passed away in the spring. He was in his late 80s and mentally sharp right up until the end. He died quietly in his sleep from heart failure, the kind of ending people call peaceful. I was his only grandchild. My father died when I was young, and my grandfather raised me every summer on that land. He taught me how to drive farm equipment before I was even a teenager. Let me take the pickup into town years before anyone else's parents would have allowed it. I loved that farm. Past tense. The funeral was small. Most of my grandfather's friends were already gone. But one man I did not recognize showed up late and stayed near the back. After the service, he pulled me aside and asked if I was inheriting the property. I said yes. He nodded slowly, like he was weighing something. He told me my grandfather was a good man. Then he said that if he were in my position, he would sell the land and never work it himself. I asked him why. He stared at me for a long time before answering. "Some land gives more than it should," he said. "And when that happens, it always takes something back." Then he walked away. I did not think about that conversation again until late summer. I was managing the farm remotely by then, paying a local crew to handle planting and upkeep. In early August, the foreman called me. He said there was a problem in the far cornfield. That field had always been my grandfather's pride. 40 acres of soil so rich it won awards year after year. It had outperformed every neighboring property for decades. I asked what kind of problem. He told me I needed to see it myself. I drove out the next morning. The farm looked exactly as I remembered it. White farmhouse, red barn, field stretching flat to the horizon. The corn was tall, much taller than normal, thick enough that you could not see between the rows. The foreman, Luke, met me at the edge of the field and led me in. At first, everything looked fine. Healthy plants, normal spacing. Then he stopped. The corn ahead of us was different. Not dead, not sick, changed. The stalks were towering, nearly twice the height they should have been, thick like poles. Each plant carried multiple heavy ears instead of one. I asked how much of the field looked like this. He told me all of it. That should have been impossible. He said he had never seen anything like it in his entire career. Then he showed me something else. Deeper in the field, there were gaps. Perfect circles where no corn grew at all. Just bare soil, each one the same size. There were dozens of them. I knelt and touched the dirt inside one. It was warm. Not warmed by the sun. The heat came from below. I checked a satellite image on my phone. That was when my stomach dropped. The circles were not random. They formed a spiral, beginning at the center of the field and curling outward with mathematical precision. There were over 40 of them. I told Luke we needed to harvest it immediately. He refused. 2 of his crew had already quit. They said they heard voices coming from the center of the field at night. I spent that night in my grandfather's house. I did not sleep. I kept thinking about what that man at the funeral had said. some land gives more than it should. Just after 2 in the morning, I heard something outside. A low sound, rhythmic, almost musical. I looked out the window. The corn was moving. There was no wind. The trees were still. The flags near the barn hung limp. But the corn was swaying, bending inward, like something large was moving through it. Against every instinct I had, I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The sound grew louder as I approached the field. Not words, just a steady, droning melody. At the edge of the corn, I stopped. The stalks ahead of me were bending toward the center. I shined my light into the rows. That is when I saw her. She looked like a woman in her 30s, wearing a simple, old-fashioned dress, floral, long sleeves. She stood several yards in, facing away from me, humming. I shouted that she was on private property. She stopped singing and turned around. Her face was wrong. Everything was there, eyes, mouth, nose, but arranged in a way that did not feel natural, like someone had tried to recreate a face from memory alone. She smiled and stepped backward into the corn. I ran. The next morning, I called Luke and told him to burn the entire field. He protested. The crop was worth a fortune. I told him I did not care. They burned it at midday. Dry corn goes fast. Thick black smoke rose into the sky. It took hours to finish. When it was over, Luke walked the field. He called me back, shaken, and said I needed to come see something. At the center of the burned area, the ash lay thinner, as if heat still rose from below. He scraped away the surface. Underneath were bones. Hundreds of them. Small, delicate, not human, but not animal either. They were arranged in spirals within spirals, patterns that hurt to look at for too long. At the center sat a smooth black stone covered in unfamiliar symbols. It was warm to the touch. I sold the property the following month at a loss. The buyers were developers. They planned to build homes. I tried to warn them. They laughed and said the soil tests were perfect. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from their site supervisor. They found underground stone structures during excavation. Unmapped. Still warm. I hung up. I do not sleep well anymore. I keep thinking about the woman in the corn. The way she smiled. The way she stepped backward, deeper into the field, like she wanted me to follow. And I keep asking myself the same thing. If the harvest was the gift, then what was the cost? And now that the field is gone, what do they want instead? I grew up on a farm, and I never thought I would be the kind of person who is afraid of a building. But there is one structure on our property that we do not touch. We have 3 grain silos. 2 of them are normal. We use them every season. They do exactly what they are supposed to do. The 3rd one is the reason I am leaving. My name is Hannah Caldwell. I have lived on this farm almost my entire life. My parents bought the land in 2001, when I was about 6 years old. The place was big, over 380 acres, a decent house, a good barn, and 3 silos sitting back from the drive. During the showing, the realtor mentioned the silos like it was a casual detail. She said they came with the property. They were part of the deal. My father asked if they were all in good condition. The realtor did not hesitate. She said the first 2 were fine. Then she looked past him toward the 3rd silo and said very calmly that one should be left alone. My father laughed because it sounded like a joke. It was not. We moved in that summer. The first 2 silos were the standard kind you see on farms everywhere. Tall steel cylinders, painted blue, around 60 feet high. We used them for corn and soybeans, and they worked without issues. The 3rd silo was different from the start. It was older, concrete instead of steel. No windows, no ladder, no access points. Just one heavy door at ground level, and a padlock. During our first week there, my father decided to open it. The padlock was rusted, so he cut it off. When the lock dropped, the door still would not move. He pushed, pulled, hit it with a hammer. Nothing. He stepped back and said it felt like it was sealed from the inside. My mother told him to leave it. We did not need the space. We had 2 working silos already. He agreed. That should have been the end. It was not. I started hearing the knocking when I was 8. Always at night. Always the same pattern. 3 knocks. 3 knocks. The sound came from outside, somewhere near the barn in the silos. Not loud enough to wake the whole house, just loud enough to keep me staring at the ceiling. I told my parents. My father checked the 2 working silos. He checked the barn. He looked for animals, loose panels. He told me it was probably wind. But on the nights I heard it, there was no wind. The knocking continued for months. Same pattern, same timing. Always sometime between midnight and 3 in the morning. I started sleeping with headphones. If I kept music on low volume, I could convince myself it was nothing. But sometimes I would take them off to use the bathroom, and the sound would be there. Closer than before. Sharper. More deliberate. When I was 13, I asked my mother again about the 3rd silo. Why did we not use it? She was folding laundry and did not look up. She said she did not know. It was like that when we bought the place. I asked if they had spoken to the previous owner. My mother stopped folding. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said, "We never met him." The sale had been handled through a lawyer. The owner did not show up for closing. He signed everything remotely. My mother went back to folding. Her hands were shaking. When I was 16, I found the letters. My father and I were cleaning the attic when I found a box labeled property documents. Inside were all the expected things and 3 handwritten letters, all addressed to future owner, all signed by the same name, Thomas Keller. The first letter was dated late spring 2001. It warned us about the 3rd silo. Do not open it. Do not enter it. Do not break the seal. The second letter explained why. Something got inside. He never saw it, but he heard it. 3 knocks. Always 3. Do not answer it. Do not acknowledge it. The 3rd letter was apologetic. And then came the line I still cannot forget. Whatever is inside cannot get out by itself. It needs to be invited. I showed all 3 letters to my parents. My father read them twice. Then he walked straight outside toward the 3rd silo. My mother and I followed. He stood in front of that door for a long time. My mother asked him to leave it alone. He said there was nothing inside. A week later, while we were in town, he cut the seal and opened the door. When we came home, he was sitting on the porch steps, pale, silent. The door was open. Inside, it was empty, except for one thing. A circle of small stones, perfectly arranged. That night, the knocking stopped. 3 days later, our dog disappeared. Sunny. She was found inside the silo, sitting in the circle, tail wagging. When my father stepped inside, the door slammed shut. He came out hours later. Sonny did not. Now the knocking is back. Not from the silo, from inside the house. And the circles are spreading. We are selling the farm. I wonder if the new owners will hear the knocking. I wonder if they will open the silo, because I do not think it is empty anymore. There is a fence on the land we used to own. It was not built by us. It was not on our property line. And for a long time, we did not understand what it was really for. My name is Lucas Monroe. My wife, Emily, and I bought a cattle ranch in the Western Plains a little over a decade ago. It was a large property, just under 1,000 acres, open grassland stretching in every direction, mountains to the west, flat prairie to the east. The fence ran along the northern section of the land. Old wooden posts, rusted barbed wire, nothing unusual at first glance. Except it did not sit on the legal boundary. During the initial land survey, the surveyor marked the true property line nearly 200 feet north of the fence. He told us the fence was entirely on our land, and that we were free to remove it if we wanted. We assumed the previous owner had misjudged the boundary years ago. We told ourselves we would deal with it later. We never did. Our ranch manager, Caleb, advised us to leave it alone. When I asked him why, he said something that did not make sense at the time. The cattle will not cross it. I laughed. We had hundreds of acres of grazing land. There was no reason animals would stop at an old fence that was not even electrified. Caleb told me they had tested it. The previous spring, they manually drove several head of cattle past the fence into the northern section. Within hours, every single one of them had crossed back over on their own. They refused to graze, refused to settle. They stayed agitated until they were back on the southern side. I went to inspect the fence myself. It was old, weathered. Some posts were rotting at the base, but the wire was still tight. As I walked along it, I noticed something else. Every 100 feet or so, strips of fabric were tied to the wire. Faded, torn, sun-bleached. Some were white, some were red. I counted 43 of them. I untied one. The cloth was brittle and fell apart in my hands. Underneath it, carved into the wooden post, was a symbol. Not a letter, not a number. A circular shape with short lines radiating outward. I checked the next post. Same symbol. Every post along the fence carried the same carving. That night, I asked Caleb about the cloth markers. He said the previous owner told him they mattered. He did not explain why. Only that if the cloth ever fell off, it needed to be replaced. I let it go. The fence was not causing any immediate problems, and we had a ranch to run. Then the drought came. One of the worst dry spells in decades. Our southern pastures turned brown. The stock pond dropped dangerously low. But north of the fence, the land stayed green. Wildflowers bloomed. Grass stayed tall. A small creek kept running as if nothing had changed. It made no sense. Same soil, same weather. I rode out to the fence on horseback. On our side, the earth was cracked and dry. On the other side, the grass was thick and damp. I found a section where the wire had loosened and stepped through. The moment I crossed, the air felt different, cooler, heavier, silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. I walked about 50 feet into the northern section. The grass was untouched, like it had not been grazed in years. I knelt and pressed my fingers into the soil. It was wet. That was when I saw the bones. scattered in the grass nearby. Cattle bones. Old, clean, bleached white. They were arranged deliberately, in a wide circle. At the center lay a broken fence post, bearing the same carved symbol. I heard a sound behind me, a single footstep. I turned around. Nothing was there, but the grass behind me was flattened, as if something large had just passed through. I ran back to the fence. The instant I crossed back onto our land, I heard breathing behind me, close. I did not look back. That night, I told Emily everything. She listened quietly, then said something I did not expect. "We need to replace the markers." I tried to argue. She told me she did not care. That weekend, we retied new cloth strips along the fence. White cotton, every 100 feet, all 43. When we finished, Emily stepped back and said the air felt wrong. She was right. That night, every animal on the ranch panicked. Hundreds of cattle bolted south in a full stampede. It took hours to calm them. At dawn, Caleb found me exhausted and covered in dust. When he saw the new cloth on the fence, his face went pale. Then he told me the truth. The fence was not built to mark land. It was built to contain it. The northern section was not supposed to expand. As long as the fence and markers held, the boundary stayed where it belonged. If they failed, the land would forget where it ended. We sold the ranch the following year, at a loss. We warned the new owners about the fence. They nodded and said they would maintain it. Last month, Caleb called me. The new owners had removed the fence. 16 head of cattle vanished within weeks. No tracks, no blood, just gone. The green land began moving south. They rebuilt the fence. The movement stopped, but the bones remain. I do not think the fence was ever meant to keep something out. It was meant to remind something where it was allowed to stay. And once you remove a boundary like that, it does not forget easily. Subscribe for more real horror stories. Like the video if you felt this fear too.